What's up, y'all? You're listening to the My Aggie Nation podcast. I'm Alex Miller, joined always by Robert Cessna. Cease, it's getting cold outside, which means one thing, it's basketball season. And unlike the temperatures, the A&M men are pretty red hot right now going into tonight's game at Oklahoma.
Yeah, when you look at coming off the win over Texas, that was a great atmosphere. Even though all the students weren't here, enough of the students were here. And then Alabama's coming up after the Oklahoma game. When you look how good the conference is, I thought studying it going in, I thought maybe Alabama, Auburn, and Tennessee might be a little bit step ahead of everybody with A&M right in there. And then lo and behold, Florida just kills Tennessee last night, and Kentucky loses at Georgia. And I think it could be a wide open race where, who knows, maybe somebody gets hot and only has 3 losses, but a lot of teams could have 4 or 5 losses just because the league is so talented, and A&M's in there. But I think we're all concerned about the health of Wade Taylor because those groin injuries don't go away, and he's playing a sport where you're constantly jumping.
Well, Cease, you're a frequent attender of Sunday school, and if you've gone to Sunday school, you've probably heard the parable of the wheat and the tares. Have you heard that parable before?
I wonder where you were going on
all
this.
Right,
okay,
all right, so follow me. In the SEC, of course, obviously they had an unprecedented non-conference slate, but to your point about just how chaotic the league has been so far through just 2 games of SEC play, some pretty lopsided results on Saturday, followed by what was yesterday. I mean, I don't know if anybody I think people would have picked Florida to beat Tennessee, but not by 30 points, and Tennessee having less than 30 points with just 5 minutes to go. My point in this is the parable goes that the wheat and the tares grow evenly, and it's hard to tell until it's right about time to harvest. And the question's going to be, which teams are the wheat, which teams are the tares? If you're A&M, amid this chaotic league, what can they do to separate themselves as wheat going into these next few weeks as we start to learn more about who are the contenders and who are maybe some more of the pretenders, even though everybody seemed to have a pretty hot start? That's where I went with that.
You use a King James version, or you use one of those new versions of the Bible?
Yeah, I'm more of a new version.
I wanted to ask you what chapter is that in. I will have to go back and look that one up. I don't quite. I need to brush up on that right now. What you don't remember what chapter is that in?
I think it's in Matthew.
Okay,
the Gospel of Matthew.
But getting back to what you said is, my wife actually brought up a good thing. She goes, "Man, the league is so tough; they'll beat up on everyone." And I think this is the first year since A&M has been to conference. I think that is something to be said, because I've always looked at the Big 12. I thought the last few years was really, really a tough league, and you would see, as you say, the teams rise to the top, and then you'd see this team get in that was 8-8 or 9-9, and they'd go to the Sweet 16 or maybe Elite 8, and then you'd see a really good team crater because losing the first or second round just because they were worn out from the conference. And I'm thinking this league this year could be tougher than any Big 12 season, and if you're playing 12 games and then go through that grueling tournament as well, it's something to consider. But I do like A&M's depth, and I do like that they play defense, but it's just something to consider as we go along. This is going to be a really tough league because, like you mentioned, A&M's at Oklahoma tonight. They come on and play Alabama. That's 3 tough games right with nothing to say, oh, we can rest people tonight.
Oh, and by the way, next week they get to go to Kentucky. So
yeah, so
I don't think A&M's won a game there since Elston Turner had his 40-point game.
Who is a break when you look at the league? Maybe Vanderbilt still.
Maybe LSU. LSU lost to Missouri pretty bad last night. They get LSU not this Saturday, but the next.
So maybe there's only 2 or 3, but when you think of a 16, 18 game schedule, then you add on the conference. I mean, man, that's a tough stretch.
I mean, you think about it though. A&M in a way has gotten a good draw, as good as you probably can in terms of who they play and where they play them. Right?
Yeah, I think
they play Texas twice. Texas got Texas got beat by Auburn last night.
I don't think Texas is great, but we'll wait and see.
Well, jury's still out on Texas. We'll find out more about how A&M sizes up against Oklahoma tonight. OU makes a return trip to College Station.
Without Wade.
Without Wade, which we'll get to in a minute. And, Oklahoma, they were picked 15th in the preseason poll. I know they started 13-0. Yeah. They got thumped by Alabama on Saturday.
No disgrace.
No disgrace. A lot of people are probably going to get thumped by Alabama. But the third one is LSU, who is looking kind of rough right now. So you think about the draw that A&M's gotten, not to mention they get Alabama, they get Tennessee, they get Auburn all at home. I mean, when you think about it, it could be a lot worse.
Sure.
You could have to go on the road at all these teams.
I'm with you.
Especially in the one-off games where you're only playing these teams once. Let's get to your point about depth. A&M's depth is going to be tested tonight against Oklahoma with Wade Taylor out. I think something you and I talked about during the game against Texas was, when Wade Taylor got that second foul after he got teed up there in the first half, which we were like, holy cow. I mean, he made a terrific play, and then all of a sudden the momentum completely swings to Texas's way. It was the bench guys that circled the wagons and turned the game back in A&M's favor. A&M's going to need that kind of effort from its bench guys when you think about a guy like Manny Obaseki, who's had an up-and-down season, a guy like Jace Carter, who has been a guy coming off the bench, or even a guy like C.J. Wilcher, who is one that they like to get catch and shoot opportunities with the three ball. They're going to need big games from at least one or two of those guys tonight to come away with a win against the Sooners.
And I'd say Garcia and Coleman, because sometimes they don't always show up, and you need them to show up. So, but just what we just mentioned here, 6, 7, 8. So they do have some depth. So it's also something about Buzz pushing the right buttons. So we'll see.
They have been playing a 10-man rotation, which, as conference play goes along, we'll see how that possibly tightens up a little bit. A guy that I wrote about for today's Z edition was Hayden Hefner, who has really kind of found his role, his niche, and has really kind of flourished in it the last few games. Not a guy that's leading the team in scoring every day or this or that, but it's just the little things that he's done that's really made the difference. The offensive rebounds, the tip-ins, the putbacks against Texas, just how critical were those in that game when you think about it, right?
Yeah, now let's see. I think he can do that with a somewhat consistent basis, but let's see, because then now suddenly in the scouting report, I think the opposing team's going, hey, you can't let up against this guy. Not that I'm saying they did, but suddenly when you play like that, suddenly you're going to be boxed out a little bit harder. You're going to be defended a little bit harder. So it'll be interesting how he sees with the crowd howling, you Hefner. Not you Hefner, but
Hayden
Hefner. Close enough.
We got a Bible lesson and we got the Playboy on one show. That is quite a podcast, Cease.
What can I say?
Well, looking at the game tonight, OU, they've got a freshman point guard in Jeremiah Fears that projected lottery pick in next summer.
Fears no one.
Fears no one. But A&M's played some of these standout freshmen. They played the two from Rutgers in the Players Era tournament down over in Vegas, I should say. They just played Trey Johnson, held him pretty well in check. So can they do it again against another young, talented guy? And I think that you're seeing that A&M's veteran presence has really shown up and delivered for the Aggies in moments where, is this game going to turn in A&M's favor, or the Aggies going to start to crumble and fall apart?
Well, A&M's defense is made to take away what the team does best. Anybody knows basketball worth their weight. You always want to take away the team's number one option, whether that's defense, whether that's a three-pointer, going inside. A&M's really good about taking that away. And sometimes, you're right, when a guy's on, there's nothing you can do about him. We've seen Wade Taylor do that against, like, U of H last year in the NCAA tournament. But you're right, it'll be interesting to see, can they do that, because 9 times out of 10, I think A&M can take away what the other team does well.
Big thing I'm looking for tonight is rebounding. Oklahoma has really struggled to rebound, especially defensive rebounding. And when you think about what A&M brings to the table on the offensive side on the glass, that could be a critical statistic come the end of the night.
And I'm looking forward because, Porter Mosier was here one time as assistant. So, he's going to take this game. His team won't, but this game will mean a little bit more to him. So that's factor, a small factor, but I always like those storylines and see how they play out.
Well, should A&M win, it's going to be either way, it's going to be a top 10 game Saturday night at Reed Arena. How exciting is it for that to be a thing going into, this second week of conference play? Students will probably be back as class starts back next week, I believe. And so that's going to Alabama preseason favorite in the SEC, of course.
Well, as you mentioned, the 3 Saturday night, they got 3 Saturday night games right off the bat or whatever at home. And you talk about getting a good schedule because not only do you get the student environment, but the locals are really into this team. I mean, buzz by winning, defense, getting back to a little bit like the wrecking crew on football a little bit. The fans appreciate this team's defense. I think when they moved to the Big 12, it was tough. You lost all your Texas rivals. A&M really wasn't that good. You're not going to come out for South Carolina. There just was nothing other than maybe LSU and Arkansas to come out for. But suddenly this team has had an identity. Go back to Boots Radford last year. And these guys have stuck around enough. They're not 1 or 2 and dones. So the community has embraced this team. They like the work ethic of this team on defense. So I think that's a plus having the Saturday night games because Saturday is made for collegiate basketball, and so A&M needs to take advantage of these Saturday night games.
Well, on the women's side, the Aggies got a huge win over Ole Miss on Sunday afternoon. Cease, how much did Joni Taylor's team need to win that game?
Well, it's one of those deals, and I was laughing. Even the Ole Miss coach said afterwards that was a must-win game for them. You don't think of about a must-win game 2 games into your conference schedule, but A&M's in a stretch where they're going to play 4 ranked teams. So if you consider they're 0-4 out of that, and then after that, when you look, well, they probably maybe should win the next 2 games. But suddenly, I don't care, men or women in the SEC in almost any sport, you lose 4 in a row, your mental approach is really hurt. I mean, can you come back from that? We saw A&M a few years ago where they lose in men's basketball, 5, 6, 7, where it's tough to come back from that, particularly when you haven't had any success like this team hasn't had this year. So huge win. So now they're not going to win the conference. The conference is way too tough. They were picked 9th and 11th in the 2 polls. So now they might be able to live up to that. And you can say, well, there's too many ranked teams. I mean, so now they've got a hope for postseason, whether it's the NCAA tournament or the NIT. They still got 2 tough games ahead of them. They're in South Carolina tomorrow. They go to Oklahoma on Sunday. They're looking at a couple losses, but suddenly 1-3 is so much better than 0-4. Then you come back and you win back-to-back games. You're back to 500. And they beat a good team. They just didn't beat anybody. Ole Miss was a good defensive team, up by 16 points at halftime. And I was talking to a couple of folks I know at halftime. I go, they might come back, but this game's over. When you're playing a team that slows down the pace, values possessions, and you're down by 16, you're not going to give up threes. But lo and behold, A&M dominated the second half. Ole Miss did not make a field goal in the fourth quarter. Zip for 12, 4 for 26 for the half. A&M gets a much-needed win. Their first ranked win over a ranked opponent in 4 years.
A&M women had some pretty rough losses in the non-conference slate that could come back to hurt them come Selection Sunday. So given what we know about where they're at, what do they need to accomplish to have a shot to make the big dance again?
Well, they'd have to win all their games that they possibly could win. The teams that are not ranked, the Missouris, the Vanderbilts, the Mississippi States. And Mississippi States and Vanderbilt are close to being ranked.
Don't they get Arkansas twice?
But Arkansas is so bad, they better beat Arkansas twice. I mean, Arkansas is the worst team in the league of them or Missouri. And so you just expect, because they lose one of those, they're done for. After what they showed against Ole Miss, you can't. And let's be honest, if they lose 4 in a row to ranked teams, then they maybe lose one to Arkansas. They were looking at probably like a 3-13 or 4-12 year if they go 0-4, because that's Cease thinking. But Cease also thought they had Sunday's game lost at halftime. So once again, sports is all about proving people wrong. So A&M women, like you said, they lost to Ball State, they lost to A&M Corpus Christi, bad losses. But suddenly you beat a top 25 team that's going to be in the top 20, and they played USC close. Ole Miss has 3 losses to 3 good ranked teams. That's, they've got a good resume, but now they've got a bad loss, which is A&M. Of course, was a good win for A&M.
So does 6-10 get them in, or do you think it needs to be 7-9, or maybe even 8-8?
Probably 7-9, because you look at the losses to Ball State and the loss to A&M Corpus. You got to make it up. Now you made up one of those by beating Ole Miss, and as you said, then you got to beat all the bad teams. You can't let Arkansas beat you. You can't let Missouri beat you. You beat one of those, you're done for. But at least they have a chance. I didn't think they had a chance if they go 0-4. Or let's put this, it'd be one of those ESPN deals. Oh, their chances of making the NCAA tournament was 0.8%. 8%. You go, okay, now I'll take the 92, even though I never got a 92 in school. But right now, they've got a lot of hope.
Well, hey, football is always on the forefront of Aggie's minds. Big loss for A&M this week with Noah Thomas transferring to Georgia. Look, here's the reality of it. He didn't have a fantastic season this year. No A&M receiver did. But the reality is that he was A&M's top receiver, and now he's gone. It is pretty much a complete overhaul of the receiver room from the Jimbo Fisher era. I don't think anybody from the Jimbo Fisher era is left in that receiver room just 1 year removed from his dismissal. So A&M obviously has hit that position hard. They've brought in 3 guys. They've got Ashton Bethel-Roman and Isaiah Williams that they think could be guys that could develop, that were freshmen this year, redshirted. And then Terry Bussey, of course, we all know, played some. So what's the outlook at receiver right now in your mind? See, do you feel good where A&M's at? Do they need to add another guy, do you think? What's your thoughts?
I think you got to be very concerned with the wide receivers, because the key about it is, Elko made reference to this. Was it the quarterback's fault not getting the balls to the receivers, or the receivers couldn't get separation? And for what little bit I saw is, I thought those against quality competition, they had a rough time getting separation. Even Thomas, I thought he should get open with the skills he had. But then sometimes when you're open, you're covered, you're still open if the people throw it to you, and A&M didn't throw it. And I can't blame Reed, because once again, he didn't start 5 games. You were undecided at quarterback. So I think some of that had to do with the wide receivers as well. If Reed had been the quarterback the whole year, or Wegman, I think that's different. But addressing your point is, if A&M's so good running the ball, which I think they could be with the offensive line, so many people back, they're going to have 3 stud running backs that, they should be able to rush for almost 180 against really good teams. So then you only need like 170, 200 pass, and then you're up to 380, 400 yards. So I don't think it's as bad, because A&M's going to be strong and other things, and Reed's going to be much more of a factor because they're going to use him more. But to be a complete team, you need to be strong in all areas. And right now, I don't see the A&M wide receiver even close to being a strength, because we don't know what those new guys can do. A couple of them were hurt. Maybe they come in. When you look at, I did a column on this, what under Colin Klein offense, you're only going to have about 18 completions per game. If things are going right, you're running the ball. You're winning games 30-20 or 32. So you're only going to have 18 completions. So you only really need about a couple guys that are really the studs, because you got to throw to wide receivers. You want to throw tight ends 3 or 4 times. So A&M has all the ingredients, but right now it's like making soup. I've got the wide receivers down as the last element of that soup. I want to get the offensive line better. I want to get the running backs better. Like you said, I feel really good about that. Defense needs to get better. We all know that. So they have enough wide receivers, I feel, even if they don't get anybody else, because the guys they have should be able to get separation, particularly if you're running the ball that well, because you're going to get single coverage.
Yeah, the thing, too, that gets me is A&M loses a guy that was just a pillar.
Stud.
He's not even that. He's 6'5". They don't have a guy like that at receiver that's coming back.
He's a stud. He's like the George Pickens, that Mike Evans. When you look at him, you go, wow, this guy should deserve double coverage, but I never saw that.
Yeah. So my point is, I'm curious to see how they move some guys around, who ends up at what spot, who's playing slot, who's playing outside. Because, I see a lot of the guys that they have coming back, and it's a lot of the same type of guy. So who is going to emerge as the 3 or 4 that will play the most throughout this spring ball and into fall camp? And how does maybe a height limitation at times factor into things for A&M?
And I look at it, it's easy to sit up in the press box and coach and make judgments. I thought all along, I saw the kid play in high school. I think Terry Bussey's an amazing talent. And once again I'm not a coach. I'm not out there every day. But in the final analysis, he touched the ball on offense, now not the kick returns, 33 times. 33 times in 13 games. I thought, considering their offense, he should have had more touches. I go, that
probably
guy,
should have had double that.
That guy's too talented, but I'm not out there. If you had Klein or Elka maybe having a beer, he couldn't get the plays right. Or we don't know. We don't know that. We just know how good he was at 2A Timpson, and we watch him, and man, he looks so smooth. He just looks like a 5-star athlete, but you didn't even get 3-star results. You kept saying, I thought he's going to break one in the return games. He didn't even do that. He had like one decent long return. And so I don't know. And once again, is Elka's first year. He gets a lot of passes. There's a lot of passes, but you know what? The passes are out. The hall passes aren't there next year. If Mbasi's that good, I want to see him. I want to see some separation. Even if they only have 17 completions, why do these other teams have wide open receivers when A&M can't get one guy open? A&M had games where they couldn't get anybody open.
Yeah, I mean, think about some of Noah Thomas's touchdown catches, right? Against Mississippi State, they got a flag for PI. I mean, he made some great catches. That were contested, but they weren't open catches like some of these other guys would get, Against Auburn, the one in the corner of the end zone was contested. The long catch and run he had, Marcel Reed made an incredible throw, kind of threading the needle there between those two guys on that slant route. And then even when he got the touchdown against USC,
Southern Cal, he had a great couple.
He had some great catches. Think about the interception that went off his hands or his head that was really costly in hindsight.
2 scores.
Yeah, that was a 14-point swing, without a doubt.
And I have to laugh because I can. I watched Elko's 7-minute meltdown several times, obviously to right and whatever, and you could see how maybe he just lost it because they were so close to so many things, but they had all those little things wrong. They couldn't get separation. They couldn't.
Can't run on guys. 4th and 1.
They couldn't third and 1. They couldn't run on 4th and 1 because they couldn't run on 3rd and 1. And so it just all. When you're 7-1, man, that team should have been 9 or 10 wins. And when I finally analyze it, they were basically a 5-4 team. You throw out the Mississippi State win, you throw out the McNeese win, you throw out the New Mexico State. They were basically a 5-4 team. And I kind of gave them a C+. But the problem was, man, they were 7-1. They were so close, but maybe they weren't that close. And then maybe that's why Elko had the meltdown, because too many things went wrong. And, it's tough because you never know when you're going to get back to there.
That is a good point. Well, hey, a team that was there and is trying to get back there is the A&M women's tennis team, who opens their season this week, along with the men. You know, tennis is not a huge sport at A&M, but it's a sport that's seen quite a bit of success on each side, men and women, here in recent years, especially the women, whose outlook looks probably just as bright as it did last spring.
Yeah, what Mark Weaver's done, and the locals, so to speak, watched him play when he was here. He was a standout All-American, particularly in doubles. Nice guy when he was playing, nice guy as a coach. And he said he was going to stay here until he won a national championship. And it's easy to say that, but he did it. And, Denton, a little bit, Steve Denton, a little bit of the older, crustier guy, an All-American player gone back today and a good professional player. They're 14th gone in the country, not bad, but you consider how the SEC is strong in everything. And
they're really good at tennis.
You can go out and see a national championship. There's like 9 men's in the top 25. You can go out and see a Final Four match almost any time. And right now they're a little, A&M doesn't have an indoor facility. Maybe they don't have as much NIL money as other schools. I mean, no one wants to talk about that. But the bottom line is they got a pretty dang good product. And when you're coming off a national championship, they were 13th seeded last year going into the tournament. But after the 2 years when maybe they should have done better, talking about how you get back to football, how tough it is, lo and behold, they couldn't get it when they were like a 6 or 7 seed, but they get it as a 13 seed. You keep knocking on that door a little bit like Bum Phillips, maybe you'll knock it down.
Yeah, and, as we know in any sport, once you have gotten to the pinnacle and you see what it takes to get there, it seems like it's a heck of a lot easier to get there because you know what it takes. And I'm not saying it's easy to win a championship. What I'm saying is you now know the process, and you have that drive to repeat what you've done once you've gotten that little taste of success.
And we'll get back to where we started. I mean, it was a great football season when you consider the atmosphere at Kyle Field for Missouri, for Notre Dame, even though they lost, for LSU. But now you can enjoy that same atmosphere with a possibility of how far they can go, the men's basketball team. And I know even my daughter tried to get tickets last Saturday night, and they were like $50 online, which is a good thing. When you're winning, people want to go watch you. And they're worth watching. It's an experience to go. Luckily I get a press pass. It's a lot nicer. But I didn't think anybody that paid price to go to Saturday night's game was disappointed.
Unless you're wearing burnt orange.
Ooh,
all right. Hey,
another. That wasn't even a Bible lesson from Alex.
Hey. They Aggieland Outfitters prints that shirt, Psalm 75:10 or 76:10, whichever one it is.
Am I right? You'll be at Grace Bible this week.
Yeah.
If they want to study the tar and feathers. Is that was it?
All right, that's enough for this podcast. We'll be back next week on the My Aggie Nation podcast.